Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. So I wanted to do a video on different types of foundation for makeup. So since the weather is getting a bit warmer where I am, I've recently found myself in that kind of dilemma of not loving the way that the current foundation I'm using is handling the heat. And also, I don't usually wear a lot of makeup, but I recently had to put on foundation, like true foundation, which I do not wear day to day, for a couple of events that I had gone to. And I really didn't like the way that this particular foundation was sitting on my skin and how it appeared. It was just a little too heavy and thick for me. So I went on a search over the weekend to try and find a better foundation for my skin. And so I figured I could share some of that information with you. So to start, let's just get down to the age-old question of liquid versus powder foundation. So I've switched between the two many times throughout the past several years I've been wearing makeup. Most recently, I was using a foundation that was a liquid. But like I said, it was just too heavy for me and I didn't like the texture. It wasn't looking good. So this past weekend I went to Ulta, and after asking a ton of questions and trying a bunch of different samples, I ended up switching to a powder. I'm still not entirely sure how much I'm loving it, but I definitely find that it's a little bit easier on my skin. So the big difference between the two is knowing mostly whether you have oily or dry skin. So this is where it gets a little tricky for me. In general, my skin tends to be more oily in the summer and hotter temperatures and more dry in the winter. I get particularly bad dry skin and my skin will start peeling and flaking. So that's kind of where I'm stuck in the middle, because for me personally, I find I do a little bit better with liquid foundation in the colder winter months where it's a bit drier. And then in the summer, I do better with a more powder-based foundation. And after doing some research, that really is the case. So it's totally personal preference when picking out foundation, but what's really important to know is the type of skin that you have. So if you find that you have slightly more oily skin, then you're probably a bit better with the powdery foundations, which will offset the oiliness of your skin. And if you have dry skin, then you'll probably do a little bit better with a liquid foundation, and that kind of locks in the moisture on your face and keeps your face from getting pretty dry. So just to go over what I was using when I switched to, I like to use Clinique products. They tend to be oil-free. I have super sensitive skin, so I try to use all oil-free products whenever I can, which is why I tend to go with Clinique. So I previously was using Clinique Beyond Perfecting. This is foundation and concealer. I had gotten it because my face was really in a bit of a rough breakout pattern and I wanted heavier coverage, but now that my face is kind of cleared up, this is just way too heavy on my skin. It's very cakey when I put it on. It's very heavy. You really only need a little bit. If you can see the applicator here, you kind of drop it on like a dropper, and I think one of my big issues was at first I would kind of smear it onto my skin and then try and blend it in, and it was just so heavy and thick. It did not blend well, and it was just too much, and I like to let my skin breathe. So ultimately this didn't work for me. If you're looking for more coverage and you'd like to use a liquid based foundation, this may be worth your time. It's fragrance free, completely oil free, and it does provide really good coverage, but again, for me, it was just too heavy. So recently, after going to Ulta, I settled on trying the Lancome Dual Finish. So this is a powder. This is the little like compact case it comes in. So so far I like it. Of note, it's actually not oil-free. When I went to Ulta, they said it was, and then when I did my own research, it's not. It has mineral oils, I think mineral oil powder in it. So not completely oil-free, but the woman that was helping me did recommend it because she said she also has sensitive skin and this is pretty good for her. I have been breaking out a little bit since trying it, but I don't really think it's from the foundation. I've been working out with the hat on, so I've been getting some breakouts like along my hairline where the sweat is building up, so I actually think that's probably what's causing the breakouts. But I'll keep you all posted if this does end up making me break out, because then I would not recommend it. The good thing about this, and one of the reasons I liked it, is because you can apply it a number of different ways. You can use a brush to get more full coverage throughout, or you could use one of the sponges. So it comes with 2 sponges. This is like a thinner dry sponge. So this is really, you know, if you want to just like powder your face, you use this one dry. I used it a little bit, as you can see. It didn't provide great coverage. I would say it provided light to maybe medium coverage. And then they provide this other thicker sponge, which is more for if you're gonna dampen the sponge. I have not yet used this, so I don't know exactly what the coverage is like on this. And I had also read some reviews online that said if you don't get the excess water out of this sponge first, it can kind of cause the makeup itself to crust when you go to dab the damp sponge in the makeup. So I don't know if I really want to chance that. I have tried it applying this with the brush, and I've been very happy with the results so far. So I think for me, that's probably what I'll stick with as far as application goes. Like I said, I don't wear foundation every day, so when I am putting foundation on, it's probably because I want a pretty more full coverage. So with that in mind, using a brush applicator is not a bad option for me. Okay, so moving on from that. Oh, and also of note, again, one of the reasons that the Lancome foundation was recommended to me is because powder does tend to sit better on the face in hotter temperatures. So as we get more into the summer, things get hotter. I think that maybe I'll start using that powder foundation more on a regular basis, just because I tend to find that, like I said, my skin gets oily in the heat, and the foundation that I wear when it gets hot just kind of settles and I don't know, it never looks right. It kind of settles into like the creases under my eyes, and it gets a little streaky, and the blending comes out. So I think the powder based for the heat will be a little bit better for me, and it tends to last a bit longer in the summer. So just something to consider as we head into the summer season. So the next thing that I want to talk about is the types. Oh, I also want to mention, since I don't wear foundation every day, I do usually use a tinted moisturizer. Again, I like Clinique, so this one has been really good. I've been using it for maybe like 2 years now. It's Clinique Fit. I got it because it's like workout makeup, and I have a job where I never know if I'm gonna break a sweat or not. So this is good for me. It's, I would say, pretty light or sheer to medium coverage. It's not true makeup, it's a tinted moisturizer. So it moisturizes my skin, which is great in the winters, like I said. The downside to this is I think it only comes in 5 shades, so it's pretty restrictive as far as colors go. And with that in mind, I'm like notorious for wearing makeup that's too light for my skin. I don't know if it doesn't look so bad now, but I would say the shade that I have now, which is light, the number, like the lightest shade you can get, is probably too light for my skin. Nothing a little bronzer couldn't fix, but if you have a unique shade of skin, or very light or very dark skin, you might have difficulty finding this product. It's like one of the signature features of this product is that if you sweat a little, it's supposed to stay on. Now, it's called workout makeup because you're supposed to work out with it on. I never work out with makeup on. Every time I do, without fail, I break out. I like to clear my skin and make sure my pores are open, because I'm not like a beautiful exerciser, and I always get really red and puffy and sweaty. So for me, it's always best to just take all of the makeup off. But I will say that if you do start sweating with this on, it stays in place. Last summer, I went to Miami. I wore this the whole time. It never really sweat off of me. I mean, it did kind of become a little unsettled on my skin, but in general, I had at least a minimal coverage once I put it on, which is a really nice effect. And also this has SPF 40, and I can confirm that in the 2 years or so that I've been using this, I have never once gotten a sunburn on my face when I had this product on. So to me, it definitely works. Now, also keep in mind that I do prime my face with a moisturizer. I use an Aveeno moisturizer every morning after I wash my face. That also has either SPF 15 or 30 on it. So I don't know if that is also a factor. But just something to know. Again, also oil-free, and it's good for 12-hour wear, which I would say is about right. Maybe get 1 or 2 more hours out of it. Doesn't last all day. If you're gonna do like a 16-hour day from like 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. at night, you probably will need to touch it up. But also, if you want to extend how long this stays on your skin, you could just put a setting powder on over it, which is mostly what I do on most days. That also helps to blend if you're having a hard time and it looks a little uneven, which can happen because it's a moisturizer and not an actual foundation. Just put some setting powder on, blend it in, and you should be good to go. So let's talk about tinted moisturizers versus BB creams. I've tried both before. Personally, I prefer the tinted moisturizer. I just think for what I do in my life, that Clinique Fit tinted moisturizer definitely works the best for me. I found with BB creams that they were a little bit too sheer coverage. I find that the moisturizers, both of them are pretty sheer coverage. You're not gonna get a lot of coverage with them. I think the tinted moisturizer gives you a little bit better coverage, in my opinion. I found the BB creams to be a bit too greasy for my skin, and they were very, very light coverage. So for me, I didn't love them. But if you don't require a lot of coverage on your skin, then maybe a BB cream works well for you. Also, if you have dry skin, a BB cream, again, might be a little bit better for you. And one of the other bonuses to using a BB cream that you don't always get with a tinted moisturizer is they tend to be filled with vitamins, which can be helpful and rejuvenating for your skin. So if that's the type of product that you're looking for, then I would steer you more towards a BB cream and less towards the tinted moisturizers. So in terms of what I use to apply different things, I had already mentioned the sponges that go with the powder foundation that I just got. In general, when I put on, so currently I have on my tinted moisturizer. I have like a little bit of concealer on under my eyes, but just the tinted moisturizer, and like I said, I put a setting powder on over it. When I put on the tinted moisturizer, you could just rub it in and blend it in with your hands. For me, I'm really not good at makeup, so I find that I get very uneven coverage that way. So I always use a beauty blender. This is the current one I'm using. Pretty standard, I guess. I think I got it at Ulta. It's good quality. I've been using it for about 2 months. I probably should get a new one. And I never know whether it's better to dampen the sponge or not, but last night I was doing some research, and the benefits to using a damp sponge is that apparently it can help save you money, because if you dampen the whole sponge before you apply your makeup, the concept behind it all is that the center of the sponge, which you can't see or get to, will be more filled with liquid, so that when you start dabbing on your product, that doesn't seep down into the middle. And so with that in mind, you're being a little bit more economical with your product, and you're not absorbing so much product and then not using it. So it does seem like if you're trying to save money or save product, you should dampen the beauty blender every time you use it. I will also note that it's in your best benefit to dampen the whole sponge as opposed to just a section of it. I always find that I get the most coverage, and it's easier to blend that way. I've tried using these dry, and I'm not usually too happy with how it comes out. It actually is pretty obvious that if you use a dry sponge, like a beauty blender, all of the product really does get absorbed, and you just won't get very good coverage. What else was I gonna say? Oh yeah. So I would say, especially for a beauty blender, I would dampen the whole sponge first, squeeze it out until, you're not getting like an excess amount of liquids coming out of it. Maybe let it sit for a couple of seconds, and then put the product on your face and blend from there. So for me, I'm not gonna show you how to blend it. Like I said, I'm not good at makeup, so Megan can do a video on that. But the key, if you don't know how to use these, is that you really should dab it on and you're not trying to wipe with a sponge on your face. Honestly, if you have sensitive skin like me, you're just gonna make your face red that way anyway, so I think you'll naturally find that you steer away from that, but again, something to be aware of. For brushes, I have a couple of different brushes that I've used before. So I used to use this brush. This is a unique brush, a unique makeup brush. I used to use this to put on foundation. Again, same concept, but this for liquid foundation. You put the liquid foundation on and you just kind of swirl and blend it in. Again, I found that if you're using a brush, especially for liquid, this gives you a pretty full coverage. So if you're really trying to get good coverage, I would go with a brush like this. The downside to using this brush for me was that, again, a lot of the makeup would get stuck within the brush and it gets gunky after a while. And I do clean my products pretty regularly, but this brush in particular I found a little bit challenging to clean, so I didn't really love it. You may also see makeup sponges like this. I've used these before. I don't really love them. I think people tend to use these dry. I think you can also use them wet. Wet would give you a little bit more sheer coverage, especially if you're using a wet sponge with the powder. Dry will give you more full coverage. For me, the downside is if you're using a dry sponge like this in powder and then you're putting it on your face, I feel like you have to smear it on a little bit more. And again, I don't find that coverage is applied evenly when I do that. So this is not my favorite way to apply product. I also would not recommend this for liquid foundation, especially if it's dry, for the same reasons as the Beauty Blender. It's gonna absorb a lot of that product and you're not gonna get so much on your skin. I would say damp it, if anything. But again, personal preference. This works for some people, maybe doesn't always work for me, but you know, now you know another option. I just bought this brush to put on this powder. I don't think I've used it yet. So it's like an e.l.f. brush. These things are pretty well priced. I got this at Target for like $5 or $6. This is a ultimate blending brush. I got it because it's pretty similar to the Kabuki brush that I currently use to put on my powders, like setting powder. I think that, again, the key to this is it will provide pretty good coverage. It's pretty easy to just kind of swirl on. And according to the packet, you could use this for concealer. I don't know if you can see it. Concealer, foundation, and bronzer, I think. Yeah. So this is kind of an all-in-one. However, with that in mind, I would not mix products with your brushes because then your face is just gonna have mixed product all over and that probably won't be so appealing. And the last but not least, I'll show you the Kabuki brush that I use. So I use this just about every day. This is what I use to put on and blend my setting powder. Currently I use the Ulta Beauty mineral setting powder. Again, oil-free, so it works well for me. Pretty light coverage, but it definitely helps lock everything in place. So I like the Kabuki brush because it's pretty big. You just kind of swirl it on, pat it around, blend everything in, and you're good to go. Kabuki brushes, if you know anything about them, they're also extremely versatile. So, you know, if you're looking for a brush that can kind of do it all, this is not a bad investment. Okay, so the last thing that I want to talk about is cleaning your products, your, I guess, tools. So I actually do take the time to clean my Beauty Blender after I'm done with it every time. So for me, all I do is I put a little bit of baby shampoo on it, kind of rub it in where I had the foundation, the bulk of the foundation, and then I put it under like lukewarm water and just keep squeezing it out until you don't see any more suds. That's really the easiest way to do that. You want to be gentle though, because it will start to crack. Since I've been using this for a while, there are some cracks at the bottom, which is one of the reasons I know it's time for me to get a new one. It does take like, I don't know, 1 or 2 more minutes, but it doesn't make or break my morning routine. And it's so much healthier for your skin because if you're not cleaning this, it just fills up with bacteria and then you pat all that bacteria onto your face every day and it's disgusting. So it may be annoying, but it's definitely worthwhile to clean your makeup tools every time you use it. Same thing goes for if you're using a sponge like this. With brushes, it gets a little bit more complicated. You're probably not gonna be able to clean your brushes every day. It does take time. I would say if you could do it like once a week, you're doing well. I also use baby shampoo. So for brushes, I'll put a little bit of lukewarm water into a cup with a little bit of baby shampoo. I'll swirl the brushes in lightly and then put the brush under the water while the water's running. And it's important to get the water kind of like on an angle like this, because if you get the water going into the brush, you might ruin the bristles, I think it's called. So you want to be careful about how you do that. And then in order to let the bristles dry out, you have to kind of shape them the way that they are maybe naturally supposed to be, and then set it out on a towel or a paper towel to let it dry. The downside is if you do it wrong, there's a very high likelihood that you'll ruin your brushes. So if you're using expensive brushes, be very careful. Don't apply too much pressure when you're swirling it around, because you're just gonna really ruin the bristles on the brush. And if you're wondering what type of baby shampoo I use, I've used two. This is Aveeno. This is like for sensitive skin. To be honest, I don't really like this one. I've just been using it to get rid of the product. It can be really hard to get this out of the cap, and it's pretty thick, so I probably won't buy this again. I also sometimes use this Johnson's baby shampoo. This one's cheaper anyways, and it's a better consistency. So I find that this one does a little bit better, but again, personal preference. You could pretty much use any baby shampoo, and I think you would be fine. So that's pretty much all I have for you guys. I'm interested to know what products you guys are using, if you have any recommendations, if you've learned anything from this video. So drop us a line in the comments below, and thanks for watching.